Hello, everybody. We're just giving everybody a chance to come on in. So greetings, everyone. With great apologies, my name is Julie Lawler. I am the Executive Director of the WestShore Chamber of Commerce. I would like to start by acknowledging that this is a joint enterprise with the Sooke Region Chamber of Commerce. I'm coming to you today from the territories of the Esquimalt and the Songhees Nations, and I know that the Sooke Chamber is on the territory of the Sauk Nation. My apologies for the delayed start. We've had tech issues with Zoom asking our panelists to do things that we had not expected, and we've also had a few changes in terms of someone who's had to make a last-minute change. So we are still potentially expecting another panelist to join us. They will come in as part of that. So you will see that in due course. This will also be recorded and posted to YouTube. So at this point, I would like to hand over to our moderator, Mike Riley, who will just say a few words and take us through the format. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 2023 Langford-Juan de Fuca by-election All Candidates Forum. My name is Mike Riley, past president of the WestShore Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for this event, which is carried out in partnership with the Sooke Region Chamber of Commerce and the Sooke Multi-Belief Initiative. If anyone is only able to attend for part of the forum, it is being recorded and will be posted to the WestShore Chamber's YouTube account as soon as it's available. It's always a challenge to get to the right balance between length of event and the opportunity for voters to hear from the candidates on a range of issues. This forum is not a debate on purpose, so that there is no over-talking of one candidate over another. The event will include opening statements, a selection of 4 questions already shared with candidates, and closing statements. To ensure voters can hear consistently from all the candidates, there will be no questions from the floor at this event. During the event, our timekeeper will use the raise hand function to indicate the candidate has 15 seconds left. When they are out of time, the hand will disappear, and there will also be an audio signal. The candidate will be given a few seconds to wrap up, but then will be muted so that I can keep us on time. So let's get started. We're going to start with 2-minute opening statements. We'll be starting alphabetically by last name. So I'd like to invite Camille Currie, BC Green Party, to start us off. And you'll need to unmute, Camille.
Apologies, more technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience. Thank you very much for asking me to speak today. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Wasanich people, Shianu First Nation, and Pachidot First Nation. I am Camille Currie. I am an advocate, a small business owner, a parent, and a concerned citizen. I have a degree in political science and economics. I have a wealth of knowledge that I have acquired from my previous career with the federal government as an integrity services investigator, and then as a nationwide integrity advisor. I am the founder and president of BC Healthcare Matters, a society that I formed over 1.5 years ago to advocate for patients' needs for everyone to have a family doctor. I saw how many people were suffering like my family, and I felt the need to speak up and to give them a voice. I am running in this election because I know my community and this province need a strong advocate that will put the needs and interests of the people first. This riding needs an MLA that will represent them, not the interests of the government. My overarching theme that guides me in my daily life and my work is well-being. The well-being of our planet, our people, and our economy. On June 24th, vote Camille Currie, Green Party candidate for Langford-Juan de Fuca. Early voting is open as of today. I voted myself this morning, and I encourage you to do so. It will be available from June 16th to the 21st.
Mike, you're muted.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Good morning, Langford, Sooke, and surrounding areas. My name is Mike Harrison. I am the Conservative candidate for this by-election. I've been a realtor for 30 years and also a small business owner for the majority of that time. I'm not a career politician. I am a resident of Langford that is increasingly concerned of our province and our community. I believe that our community needs light, rapid transit into the downtown, from Langford down to Victoria, to alleviate some of the overwhelming traffic chaos. Now the more than ever, I believe that our community and our province needs a conservative leadership that will bring back common sense and get back to basics. I believe I'll represent the residents of Langford and Sooke and other communities in this riding, and believe that the by-election is an opportunity for voters to make their voice heard and vote for the Conservatives. Finally, once again, I've done this once before, and I really mean this with integrity. I want to thank John Horgan for all the years of service to this community. As a Conservative, I don't agree with most of his policies, but I do wish him well and hope that he is in good health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike Harris of the BC Conservatives, and thanks for jumping in while I was muted myself. We now have Mike Lee of the United Party on behalf of Elena Lawson.
Hi, my name is Michael Lee. I'm the MLA for Vancouver-Langara, and it's the BC United Party, of course. And just pleased to be joining today's panel discussion here. And as you may well know about Elena Lawson, she's an island girl, born and raised and grew up in Esquimalt. She's been married for almost 10 years to her husband, Matt. She's a mom for 2 young boys, William and Marcus, 8 and 4. She started working as a teenager and had 2 jobs by the time she was 16. She worked in the private sector right after high school while attending post-secondary and was living on her own by the age of 17. She worked in real estate, property management, and project management, and spent the last 12 years in the BC Public Service. She's running because she's tired of families like hers being ignored and bullied by the NDP government. Like many others, she's tired of the status quo, and she wants a change. She wants to keep government accountable for the poor policy decisions that have kept pushing through with little to no consultation or consideration for the people who are affected. In 2021, the NDP government tried to eliminate autism funding, which would have negatively affected thousands of children. She stood up with many others and fought for over 1.5 years to get them to stop. That was a long 1.5 years. Finally, in November of 2022, the Premier announced a pause to this project, but she has little faith that they will not press go again after the 2024 general election. She has always said if she can't change it from the outside, then she's going to go in to affect change from the inside. Elena Lawson believes that the government is falling and failing across the board, and Langford-Juan de Fuca itself deserves a strong advocate to stand up for what's right.
Great, thank you very much, Michael Lee, on behalf of Elena Lawson of the BC United Party. Next, we will hear opening remarks from Ravi Parmar of the BC NDP. Ravi.
I'm here. Sorry, it took a sec for my video to come on. Thanks very much, Mike, and to the WestShore Chamber and Sooke Chamber for the opportunity for my fellow candidates. And it's good to see Michael Lee, all the way from Vancouver, join us for this important all candidates meeting. I want to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you from the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and also want to take an opportunity to recognize the nations that I've had an honor of working with so closely all throughout Langford-Juan de Fuca, and that is the Shianu Nation, Beecher Bay, the Sauk Nation, including the West Coast Pacheedaht Nation, Nachalnath, and thank them for sharing these beautiful lands with us. My name is Ravi Parmar, and I'm honored to be running to be the next BC NDP MLA for Langford-Juan de Fuca to fill the incredibly big shoes left by my dear friend John Horgan. I have lived in this riding for almost my entire life, and for the last 10 years have served as a school trustee and chair of the Sooke School District Board of Education, where I worked very closely with John Horgan to deliver the largest expansion of public education in our school district's history, 2,200 new seats with new schools all throughout our community. Now I want to continue that hard work as your next MLA, delivering on important infrastructure like health services, transportation, and addressing the cost of living issue impacting so many people in Langford-Juan de Fuca. I want to be the MLA this community deserves, I want to thank the Chamber for providing an opportunity for all of us to be able to speak directly to the voters of Langford-Juan de Fuca. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to touch on a number of important topics impacting people in this community. This is a very important by-election, and I thank you for tuning in.
Thank you very much, Ravi. And to wrap us up, based on the alphabet, we have Stasi Eriksson, who will be speaking for Tyson Strandlund of the Communist Party of BC.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Stasi, and it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you today a bit about the Communist Party platform in Tyson's place, since he's unfortunately unable to join us. So Tyson was born and raised in Victoria. He did his master's degree at UVic and wrote his thesis on the history of decolonization in the 20th century, something that as a member of the Métis Nation, he is very proud of. Since we don't have much time today, I would like to highlight some of our policies which aren't addressed in the questions, starting with our demand for immediate action to ensure inherent Indigenous title to all traditional territories and a halt to resource projects on Indigenous lands without full consultation and approval in accordance with the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. We want to implement mixed member and proportional representation and lower the voting age to 16. We are demanding the long overdue action needed to end the opioid crisis, which is killing thousands of people every single year, with the establishment of a permanent, safe and legal and regulated supply of drugs and expansion of long-term recovery support programs. And on that note, we do want to fight back against the privatization of our public healthcare system and expand it to include mental health, optical, dental, and pharmaceuticals. Finally, we're calling for an end to the $500 million in taxpayer funds spent annually on private and religious schools, and the redirection of those funds towards public education, on which the provincial government spends $1,000 less per student than the Canadian average. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stasi. And thank you all candidates for your opening remarks. Next, we're going to move on to the question section. Moving along alphabetically by last name, we're going to ask Mike Harris, the BC Conservative Party, to start us off with this question and then finish with Camille Currie. Each candidate has 2 minutes to answer each question, and the first question is about business. Many businesses are still recovering from the impacts of the pandemic, as well as dealing with increased costs due to inflation, the ripple effect over minimum wage increase, and the 2022 introduction of employer-paid sick leave. If elected, how will you help businesses thrive?
Thanks, Mike. I understand the challenges of running a business day to day, managing employees, dealing with their personal issues at times, also actually being a counselor. This country is built on small business. However, with the tax structure and the regulations that this province has under the NDP, there isn't very many incentives to be in business today. The government recently penalized business by transferring the MSP contribution and the introduction of the 6-pay added to or overwhelming burden and costs. That doesn't include the pressure of the PST, GST, workman's compensation, payroll, etc. Small business owners usually work many hours after the business has closed, making sure that the business remittance are done on time, avoiding even more expense with late penalties and interest. We need to allow businesses to drive this economy, not the government. The government's meant to govern. I believe that the Conservative government can deliver a better solution, and we need to bring common sense back.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear for 2 minutes on the same question from Michael Lee.
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in the introduction of Elena Lawson, she has worked in the private sector for many years. And as a mother of 2 children, 2 sons with her husband, Matt, she is obviously looking to ensure that good paying jobs and employers and employees are supported throughout the Langford region. She has been very concerned about how there's been an addition of 29 new and increased taxes under David Eby's NDP government since coming into power over the last 6 years. Small businesses, certainly with those with lots of payroll in the restaurant industry, are being punished by the employer health tax, which is something that the Green Party voted for and supported every step of the way. Only the BC United has fought against this cumulative tax burden that has been saddled on small and family-owned businesses across BC. Businesses are also being impacted by rampant property crime and a lack of safety in our downtown cores. Just last week, Kevin Falcon, the leader of the BC United, again stood with Elena Lawson in this area, talking about the concern about property crime and safety in our parks and our neighborhoods. That is why, in light of rampant crime in our communities, the BC United has called for a province-wide grant program like the one proposed by the BC Improvement Associations of BC to help small businesses cover costly security upgrades and property repairs. This is something that Elena believes very strongly on, knows the balance that's necessary to ensure that we can support small family-run owned businesses, including in the area that she wants to represent, and she will be a strong advocate for you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Next up, same question on business from Ravi Parmar.
Thanks very much, Mike. And such a really important question, and in particular, a special question for me as a former summer intern at the WestShore Chamber of Commerce, something that I did after graduating from Belmont for a couple of summers. And so I had an opportunity from a really young age to be able to speak to business owners all throughout the WestShore and Sooke region, and certainly have continued to do so as chair of the school board. We know that the global inflation challenge is impacting people and businesses all throughout our community, all throughout our province, and all throughout our country. And we need to be taking strong steps to be able to support businesses. What we won't do is what Kevin Falcon and the previous government have done, and that is Kevin Falcon, when he was finance minister, promised to reduce the small business tax rate. And then as finance minister, he broke that promise. So when Carol James became our finance minister in our first budget, we cut the small business tax rate to one of the lowest in the country. That had a direct impact on businesses. When I am out in Langford-Juan de Fuca, in this community, not over in Vancouver, but in this community, talking to people, talking to businesses, the number one issue I hear is talent. People need workers, and businesses need workers in every facet. And so I'm really proud of the new Future Ready plan, and in particular, the new $3,500 training grant. So we've got a new university that's going to be opening up in Langford-Juan de Fuca in the next couple of years, and we need to ensure that we're training the next generation of workers. We have a strong shortage of workers right now. Our economy is booming, but I want to be a part of a government that delivers more skills training. I also want to be a part of a government that reduces childcare fees. Again, the work that we've done in the last few years, people and families are saving on average per child $900 per month. Those are some of the steps that we're taking that will directly impact and help benefit businesses all throughout Langford-Juan de Fuca, whether you're here in downtown core of Langford, Sooke, all the way out to Port Renfrew. Thanks very much for the question.
Thank you, Ravi. Now we'll hear from Stasi Eriksson in speaking for Tyson Strandlund.
So the word inflation has been thrown around a lot lately, but this is a word that really masks the reality of what is happening. Prices have risen dramatically over the last year, along with corporate profits, while real wages and incomes, purchasing power, continue their dramatic fall. Who's responsible for this? It's the corporate monopolies and their governments who are overseeing the most massive transfer of wealth from the working class to the corporations and the rich in decades. From 2019 to 2022, corporate profits in Canada rose by 40%, while real wages have actually dropped by 2.6%. Corporate landlords, banks, and grocery chains raked in billions, while food, fuel, and rent became unaffordable, and hunger and homelessness rose across the country. Small businesses are facing higher costs, not because of workers' wages or sick days, but because of price gouging by big corporations. It's this unrestrained corporate power and greed that is responsible for this crisis, which is aided and abetted by governments that enact wage restraints, corporate tax cuts, privatization, and divert social spending. Even amidst a global pandemic, corporations and the mega rich have been price gouging us and making billions of dollars of profits on essential goods, like the Weston family here in BC. It's time that we make the rich pay. starting by revoking the 2001 tax cuts, which cost BC $3 billion annually. Thank you.
Thank you, Stasi. And to wrap up this section, we'll hear from Camille Currie.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to share that my husband and I are both small business owners. And so while we don't face the same challenges as some larger companies do, we have still faced many challenges. And in fact, some that are very specific to being a small business versus a corporation. As such, I understand how difficult it has been to deal with COVID and inflationary pressures. Due to the many changes that have occurred resulting from COVID, the BC Greens and I believe that an impactful change we would like to see happen is for an increase to the minimum threshold for the employer health tax. As I've been speaking to employers and small business owners, the frequent feedback I'm also getting is that many would like to return to the workforce, but are unable to do so because of lack of availability for childcare. While we have made some progress in creating affordable childcare, we need to make more progress on increasing providers and childcare placements. I've also heard from providers attempting to participate in the affordable childcare program that complex policies have made it more difficult for them to conduct business. It does no one any good if barriers and policies are deterring people from entering our labor market. My husband's business is a mobile business, which means as gas prices rise, our costs rise and our take-home decreases. The BC Greens have called for a windfall tax that would claw back some of the profits oil and gas companies are bringing in and return the proceeds to Canadians, to British Columbian citizens. The federal government offered $50 million to the BC NDP to protect BC's old growth, and the BC NDP refused to match that. This money could have been used in partnership with First Nations for startup, expansion, or education of alternative economic opportunities. Why did the BC NDP not take action on this opportunity to support our economy?
Thank you very much, Camille, and thank you, candidates, for that broad spectrum of answers. You've certainly given us a lot to think about on how you would expect to help businesses thrive. Next up would be Elena. So speaking for Elena is Michael Lee of the BC United Party. And the next question is about affordability. What programs would you like to see initiated and would support to alleviate this problem? You have 2 minutes.
Well, under David Eby's NDP, the cost of food, gas, and groceries just keep getting worse. In BC, we have had the highest rents and housing prices in the country. Rent alone has increased 38% in Langford under the NDP. 44% of households are less than $200 away from bankruptcy at the end of each month. And today in Langford, gas costs nearly $2 a liter, more than $150 to fill up the family minivan. The BC United successfully pushed government for a one-time increase in the Climate Action Tax Credit to help families with the high cost of gas last summer. We've been also calling on the government to temporarily suspend the provincial fuel tax when gas prices are high, something that has been shown by Stats Canada to reduce inflation in Alberta, for example. When it comes to housing, people want to afford a home that is close to transit and has an easy commute to work or school. Those are the kinds of homes we want to build. We should be flooding the zone with all kinds of new housing, condos, townhomes, apartments, market rentals, affordable rentals, along with building the infrastructure like transit, childcare, and schools that growing communities need and deserve. In contrast, David E's decision to replace single-family zoning with fourplexes province-wide as a one-size-fits-all approach that promotes urban sprawl, rather than a comprehensive plan that meets the diverse needs of BC's communities. Under David Eby and the NDP, we want to build, unlike David Eby and the NDP, we want to build a high density where it's needed most, not urban sprawl. And we know that Elena Lawson, of course, has been so concerned about families and childcare. She's been a strong advocate to ensure that there's access to the daycare needs that are needed for children and the supports across our province.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ravi Parmar.
Thanks very much, Mike, and taking just a moment to acknowledge it's difficult to hear the response from the previous person, and no disrespect to Michael, but it's tough to hear when you don't have Elena here representing the BC United Party talking about the concerns of Langford-Juan de Fuca. In fact, we have someone from Vancouver doing so. And so what with the approach of this question, what I wouldn't do is what the BC Liberals did for 16 long years, and that is give tax breaks to the top 2%, double MSP premiums, and take money away from ICBC to fund tax breaks for the rich. We know what Kevin Falcon would do if he was successful. He'd cancel the speculation tax, he'd cancel our ICBC changes, and raise the maximum rent increase. People can't afford Kevin Falcon. So I'm proud of the work that David Eby and our government are doing. We're delivering childcare savings. I talked about it before, $900 per child in savings per month. Boosting the BC family benefit this July, which is going to provide up to $250 more for families with 2 kids and up to a $500 top up for single parent families. Boosting the climate action tax credit in July, an extra $400 per year for a family with 2 kids. Reduced ICBC rates, delivering more affordability credits in October, January, and April, as much as $1,230 in the pockets of families. Providing free prescription contraception, and as well, something that I got a chance to enjoy not too long ago was jumping on the new Blink 95 bus and seeing so many kids under the age of 12 jumping on and riding transit free. That saving alone is saving families $650 per child. I'm proud of the work that our government has been doing on making sure that we can address the affordability crisis. It's clear we need to do more, and I'm going to be a strong voice in the legislature for the people of Langford-Juan de Fuca on this topic.
Thank you, Ravi. Now on the question of affordability, we'll hear from Stasi Eriksson, speaking for Tyson Strandlund of the Communist Party of BC.
Thank you. When first reading this question, it was unclear at first what was meant exactly. Affordability of housing, of childcare, of groceries or gas. And that is very telling because the cost of everything has skyrocketed over the past several years with no sign of stopping. We have a number of policies that we would like to implement in this regard. So first of all, let me say that in our view, housing should be treated as a fundamental human right, not a source of profit. We have an extensive housing plan, which you can read about on our website, but I would like to highlight a few of our proposals. For one, the creation of a public developer with a mandate to build non-market affordable rental units, starting with the immediate construction of 100,000 units of new and renovated low-income social housing. Furthermore, we would prevent real estate investment trusts and institutional investors from buying up more property and prioritize the expropriation of properties currently owned by these investment trusts. And finally, we'd like to roll back rent on all units and cap rent at 20% of residents' income. We're also calling for urgent acceleration of plans to implement province-wide universal affordable quality childcare. Our party is the only party in this election which believes everybody deserves a living wage, which is why we're calling for an immediate
I'm going to pause. We lost.
Yeah.
What are you saying, Britt?
Sorry, I was just saying that we lost audio, but it looks like she's lost her connection entirely. So.
Okay. Yeah, there was like her final 15 seconds there was gone.
Oh, sorry about that. My connections is apparently unstable.
Yeah, we lost sort of the last 15 seconds of your statement there, Stasi. So if you'd like to finish, please.
For sure. Thank you so much. Yes. So like I mentioned, we're calling for urgent acceleration of plans to implement province-wide universal affordable quality childcare. And our party is also the only party in this election which believes everybody deserves a living wage, which is why we're calling for an immediate increase in the minimum wage to $23 an hour, as well as doubling the shameful social assistance and disability rates.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up, we'll hear from Camille Currie. BC Greens.
Thank you very much. The BC NDP and the BC United haven't had the political courage to do more than just tinker around the housing crisis. If we have any hope of providing affordable housing options, we have to ensure we are building all types of housing, from cooperative housing to upper class income housing. We need to stop treating housing like a profit vehicle and more as the human right that it is. Housing is a big issue for businesses. I've heard it from business owners. They talk about being unable to attract skilled labor because prospective employees cannot find somewhere to live in the community where they want to work. Businesses suffer as a result. People want to be able to live where they work. This makes things more affordable and it gives them the life-work balance. But for many, affordability goes beyond housing. Their affordability is challenged by the cost of prescription medications, transportation costs, child care costs, fuel, and groceries. Studies have shown that the increase in gas cost is due to corporate profiteering, not due to taxes. The BC Greens are taking steps, though, to address some of these issues, like calling for free transit for those under the age of 18. Young employees are often the backbone of the hospitality and service industry, often during the busy tourist season as they take summer jobs. We need to address this now. The BC Greens were also part of developing affordable childcare, but the second part of having childcare being affordable is it being available. There are 2-year wait lists in some communities for childcare, which makes it impossible for parents to return to the workforce. BC Greens have also called for psychologists to be included in MSP so that more people can take care of their mental well-being without having to fear it costing too much. A healthy population is a healthy workforce. We've made some progress on improving affordability, but we have a long ways to go still.
Thank you, Camille. And wrapping up this section on affordability, we'll hear from Mike Harris.
Thanks, Mike. So, you know, for years and years, for all we hear is from all the politicians that, you know, they're concerned about affordability. But is that really their priority? Because you know what? There's been very little help. We have put ourselves into a position where the average salary in this province is basically almost taking up, in some cases, half of their tax or half of their paycheck for income tax. It's a huge burden that impacts on most people. Government policies only make things worse. The carbon tax will take more than $3 billion from the pockets of British Columbians this year. About 50% of the people today struggling on a daily basis to just keep food on their table. How is this affordable? Conservative government will make sure that those increases stop and will work to eliminate the carbon tax completely in BC. There is so much more the Conservative Party will do to help affordability. However, this is a pretty broad, probably not just a provincial, but a federal situation. And I'll tell you something, there's so much more that can be done that's not being done. You know, that's all I can say at this time.
Thank you very much, Mike Harris. So question 3 is on climate crisis, and Ravi, you will be first up. What proposals do you have to address the impacts of the climate crisis in our riding, including reducing greenhouse gases and adapting for climate change? 2 minutes to you.
You bet. Thanks very much, Mike, for the question. Look, the climate crisis is the global challenge of our time, and I think we owe it to future generations to do our part each and every day to fight climate change. And in contrast, the BC Liberals and Kevin Falcon and his previous government failed to take any concrete actions to address climate change. And in fact, and unfortunately, continues to allow climate deniers to be a part of his caucus. I'm proud of the work that we're doing as part of the BC NDP government. We're tackling climate change while making sure that we're making life better for people. Clean BC, our world-leading climate action plan, is one of the most ambitious climate action plans in the country. And proud of the work we did with Dr. Andrew Weaver, an awards-winning scientist and former leader of the Green Party, to develop that plan. And I'm looking forward to taking action on that plan as the next MLA. And I'm honored to have the endorsement of Dr. Andrew Weaver in this very important by-election. 3 important pieces that I want to touch on. 1 is we're bringing in an emissions cap for the oil and gas industry. 2, we're making good progress in rebates for electric vehicles, heat pumps and e-bikes. And I know e-bikes are relatively popular out here in Langford-Juan de Fuca. And the third piece that I've been talking to voters about all throughout this constituency is our commitment to protect 30% of our land base by 2030. I'm proud of the progress we've been making. We've got a lot more work to do, and I'm looking forward to being a strong voice for this community in the legislature, making sure we're tackling climate change each and every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi. This question now moves to Stasi Eriksson.
Thank you. So the American author, Dr. Michael Parenti, writes that the essence of capitalism is to turn nature into commodities and commodities into capital. The live green earth is transformed into dead gold bricks with luxury items for the few and toxic slags for the many. End quote. Ultimately, it's only through a complete shift from the profit-driven capitalist system towards socialism that we'll be able to seriously address the climate crisis. One of the most immediate ways to address this would be ending the billions of dollars in annual subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. And here's another one. Let's cancel the tens of millions of dollars being spent by the province on the RCMP's so-called Community Industry Response Group, the special squad which monitors environmental groups and Indigenous land defenders and water protectors on behalf of corporate interests. And let's redirect all these funds towards renewable energy and conservation. Our party would immediately cancel the Site C Dam, LNG Coastal GasLink fossil fuel project, and Trans Mountain expansion. Bus routes should be expanded and frequency increased, while being made universally fare-free to increase the ridership. And most importantly, if we are really serious about preventing environmental collapse, we need to put natural resources under public and democratic control. The profit-driven capitalist system is killing the planet, and we can't fight it with greenwashed capitalism. We need to fight it with socialism, the system where working people have political power, not corporations and the rich. As Chico Mendes said, environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening. Thank you.
Thank you, Stasi. Camille Currie, 2 minutes for the BC Greens on the issue of climate change.
A very important point that I'd like to make is that the BC NDP's initiative to defer and delay is not taking action on issues like old growth, and is not a commitment to protect them at all. The BC NDP has not implemented even one of the 14 recommendations from the old growth report, which is now 2.5 years old. Further to that, it was recently announced that because of errors in the BC NDP's mapping and data of old growth, they've designated more ancient growth forests to be clear-cut currently at this time. I've spoken with residents from Sooke to East Sooke to Otter Point to Shirley to Shorten River to Port Renfrew, and they have shared with me how concerned they are about water safety and water supply. The NDP have not done the work to ensure that we have accurate data on both water resources and use. This is to be part of the Water Sustainability Act. Why are we not achieving this? In order for us to make good decisions about developments, we need to have a clear understanding of the region's carrying capacity. Climate change is going to continue to intensify. The droughts is going to intensify the droughts and make our water scarcity a bigger problem. We need to get in front of this now. There's no waiting until a crisis point. I'm committed to a community-led model of decision-making that ensures we are creating true resilience in all parts of BC. I have spoken with many of you, and I want to continue to join conversations with you to encourage your community resilience. Water security, food security, and energy security have all been at the need to all be at the forefront of decision-making right now. And to do that effectively, though, we need data, we need reliable information, we need transparency from this government. We need a government that will take action. And the best way to do that is to elect me, a BC Greens candidate, that will hold them to it.
Thank you, Camille. Next up, Mike Harris of the BC Conservative Party.
Okay. All right. Next issue. Wow, it's pretty global. Huge. Climate. Okay, the NDP government hasn't addressed this issue other than people's rebate on expensive cars, heat pumps, and traditional insulation. They haven't addressed the larger issue, which, you know, I think for the most part, government does know this, which is buildings themselves. Sure, we have a new building code that are providing, very efficient buildings, but what about all the older buildings? There are more older buildings than new buildings. Buildings contribute one of the largest amount of heat into the atmosphere, adding to warming to the planet. As a province, we need to look at other products to reduce the issue and reduce the energy consumption, not just sell electricity, not just cutting off natural gas, actually consuming. And the word conservative actually means conserve. So I know that the Conservative Party can deliver on this common sense issue. There's more to it than just one thing or another thing or another thing. I mean, we have a lot of global leaders out there that are basically putting themselves into a position. So to be able to address this situation in a small little riding, speaking on behalf of our whole world here is basically affected by this. Anyhow, other than that, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And then finally, Michael Lee for the BC United Party.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. As we know, Elena Lawson takes a very long approach on this in terms of looking generationally in terms of the future of our children and our children to come, in terms of protecting our natural environment for generations to come. I know that with the NDP candidate here on this panel, he may want to take the opportunity to continue to mislead, misinform, and put untruths out about Kevin Falk and the BC United Party. But we do know that there's been a strong record of climate leadership here for Kevin Falk and the BC United, and that is a focus for our party. We need to expand our clean energy supply to power our clean energy future. Even yesterday, David Eby, the NDP, have brazenly flip-flopped on using independent power projects, IPPs, to supply clean energy. BC United is proud of our leadership in kickstarting the clean power industry in British Columbia and partnering with Indigenous nations on IPPs. The NDP have fought our climate energy leadership every step of the way, claiming BC didn't need the power and that it was a waste of money to invest in wind, solar, and micro hydro projects. After taking power, the NDP moved to shut down the IPP program with many projects belonging to First Nations. They were punished by the NDP for pursuing energy security or clean energy production as a source of revenue. By dismissing these projects, the NDP hammered and hampered the economic independence of many First Nation communities and left these First Nations hanging out to dry, waiting on contract renewals. And that still occurs today. For the NDP to go back to supporting these independent clean energy producers now is utterly hypocritical, just like the total NDP hypocrisy on Site C after years of fighting that clean energy project. Countless First Nations in all British Columbia deserve an apology for gaslighting by the NDP and the years that have been lost that could have been spent bolstering energy security for our province with First Nations. The NDP are good at making announcements.
Thank you very much, Michael Lee. I will remind candidates that we have 2 minutes to answer questions and that he is speaking on behalf of Elena Lawson. So this All Candidates Forum is moving along swiftly. We are at our last and fourth question. So Stasi, you'll have the opportunity to start us off. This is about cooperation with local governments. How will you contribute towards the financial stability of local governments as they address such critical matters as public safety, such as fire and police services, infrastructure developments, for example, roads, sewers, sidewalks, and reconciliation? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. While municipalities pay part of the cost towards police, part of it is paid for by the province. Now, although municipal governments have the ability to levy various taxes locally, the provincial governments actually have the power to force them to increase police budgets. We think this power should be removed. The Sooke RCMP has a budget of over $3 million annually and is set to increase by about 50% by 2027 to almost $4.5 million. It should be abundantly clear that this amount is far too much, which is why we support calls to substantially cut police budgets and have these funds redirected towards things our communities desperately need, like housing, healthcare, public education, and renewable energy. Our party also calls for provincial support to establish municipal land banks to acquire land for affordable social housing, schools, hospitals, parks, and public works, which are tailored to meet local needs like Langford-Juan de Fuca. As for local fire departments, about 50% of calls they respond to are medical, and fire departments are often the first responders to emergency medical situations, in part due to our desperately underfunded public healthcare system. We have a severe shortage of paramedics in this province, which is why we are calling for the elimination of the shamefully low standby pay given to paramedics at times that they're not responding to a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Stasi. Camille Currie of the BC Green Party.
This is a very complex question, but it's also a very pivotal one. The provincial government controls the money, but the municipalities have to deal with the needs of their communities. We need more direct funding to municipalities and local governments so they can invest in the priorities that they identify and that they set, and so that they are not just chasing the provincial government's priorities. This could ensure that the varying needs of communities are truly addressed and not forgotten in the budgets. The priorities outlined by the government are to make them look good. What I want to do is support what you identify as the needs in your municipalities. I have seen my own municipality struggle on this front. I will stand with local representatives who have been calling for equity in the fiscal framework. BC United and the BC NDP did not change this during their time in power. It's time for this riding to have a representative that will advocate for equity in the framework. I would be remiss if I did not mention again that the BC NDP did not match the federal government's offer of $50 million. That would be $100 million that could have been used to support reconciliation efforts. We need to make smarter choices with how the money is spent. We need to make smarter choices about planning for the future. Forest fires are increasing every year. I recently came to understand that many urban fire trucks are often called out to forest fire locations. It seems logical, but what they explained to me it results in is a lot of damage to the urban fire trucks, which results in millions of dollars in repairs. Is this the best way to proceed? Should we instead consider investing in 4x4 type of fire trucks that can respond to both rural and urban? This requires forward thinking that the BC NDP is lacking. We need to make better choices about how money is spent in this province.
Thank you, Camille. Mike Harris of the BC Conservative Party.
Okay, Mike, can't get the video up. All right. Okay, well, thanks, Mike. Local governments have been asked to do too much. There's only one taxpayer with combined. I think that combined local, provincial, and federal taxes are pushing more people to the edge of poverty. Communities are struggling to keep up, especially when it comes to the policing of infrastructure. Our water, our sewer lines are usually old and need significant upgrades. This compounds by the need of additional housing and pressure of growth. What's needed is a three-way engagement between federal, provincial, and municipal. You would see a dedicated committee supporting infrastructure improvements. This would help alleviate some of the cost pressure on our communities so they can utilize resources for other priorities. As I said, there's only one taxpayer. It's time that all levels of government recognize and put the people at the center of the priorities. A little disappointed as well is we're having these provincial talks in a municipal riding. So it's a little bit overwhelming to be talking provincially when there's one MLA. That's all. I'll close on
that. Thank you, Mike Harris. So to you, Michael Lee, how will Elena Lawson deal with cooperation with local governments?
Well, thank you for the question. Elena certainly believes that cooperation and collaboration is key, and that in her role as the MLA for Langford-Juan de Fuca, she would work in the best interest of all residents. As she has spoken repeatedly throughout this campaign and the lead up to this as well, public safety has become a key issue in the West Shore. She's hearing on the doorsteps that people don't feel safe in their neighborhoods anymore. They're afraid to go out for a walk, and that residents, all residents, deserve to feel safe in their community. Elena believes that we need to ensure our police and first responders are funded to the levels that they require to keep our communities safe. Having the relationship with first responders to know what they need and working with local governments is a key focus for Elena to ensure that they get the supports and funding that they need. Infrastructure is something that will also be a continued focus for Elena in terms of what continues to be needed to be upgraded, whether it's roads, sidewalks, or sewers. The West Shore is one of the fastest growing communities, and with all the new development comes the need for safe ways to travel, whether that is by car, foot, or any other mode of transportation. Elena would advocate for the safety of her community by working with local government, as well as asking the provincial government to invest more on infrastructure throughout Langford-Juan de Fuca. For example, sidewalks is a key priority that Elena's identified, including sections of the riding that don't have connecting sidewalks, where people are walking on the side of the road to get from one point to another point. Again, as I've led off by saying that David Eby's NDP has been standing in the way of banning the use of deadly drugs like heroin, cocaine, fentanyl in public places, like parks, playgrounds, where children play. And this has been a key focus for Elena and the BC United team with Kevin Falcon. So we call on David Eby's.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael Lee. And finally, Ravi Parmar of the BC NDP.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mike, for the question. And it's so important. I know that, if I'm successful as the next MLA for Langford-Juan de Fuca, sitting down with our local governments needs to be a top priority. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity engaging with the mayors and councils of Langford, Sooke, as well as the Highlands, and also sitting down with my good friend Al Wickham, the area director for the CRD, the Juan de Fuca area, and as well is engaging with our local nations as well, the Shianu, Sooke, and Pachadat nations as well. And because UNDRIP is important, the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous peoples, and making sure that our Indigenous nations are involved in the discussion as well. A couple of priorities that I would work with local governments on has already been touched on, and that is making sure that we're keeping up with our infrastructure. I was proud of David Eby. One of the first actions he took as premier was to bring in $1 billion investment in local governments. And in particular, Langford received $16 million and Sooke received nearly $5 million to be able to help build sidewalks and infrastructure to support the growth these two communities are receiving. I want to help ensure that we're doing more of that. And unfortunately, my friend Michael from Vancouver and the United Party voted against that in the legislature. We want to keep people moving. It's too common for us to get stuck in traffic here. And so I'm really proud of the new rapid bus from downtown Langford to downtown Victoria. I had an opportunity to be on that bus a couple of weeks ago and engage with so many people who are enjoying that service. And we need to do more of that. We need to ensure that rapid bus continues out to Sooke and also make sure the services all throughout Langford-Juan de Fuca are increased, and I'll be a strong voice on that. And lastly, with the level of growth we're seeing here, I also want to touch on the important work we should be doing with our boards of education. As a school board chair, I know how important it is for us to be able to build new schools for our community, and that's going to be a big priority. And I'm the one that's got the track record for the last 10 years in delivering new schools for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. And thank you to all of the candidates and their representatives for your thoughtful responses. On a personal note, I'm glad to say that I don't live in this riding, so I don't have to choose between all of you. So we're now going to move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we're going to do this in reverse alphabetical order by last name. So I'd like to invite Stasi Eriksson for Tyson, Riel, Strandlund to get us started.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Our party has an extremely comprehensive platform, and it's unfortunate we've had so little time to go into greater detail. We are a small party, but we're a party of big ideas, and more than just big ideas. We are a party with a long, proud history and very, very deep roots in the labor movement, women's rights movement, and numerous other progressive causes. It was our comrade, the great Canadian Dr. Norman Bethune, who spent years building the mass movement in this country, which eventually forced the government to adopt our system of socialized healthcare. Our party is the party of socialism, which to me means the party of real democracy. Yes, we do have elections here and we vote every so often to change the faces in the government, but it's a very strange democracy indeed, which is supposed to represent the majority, and yet in which the majority of people continue to see rising costs of living, skyrocketing rent, falling real wages, and all while a small handful accumulate more and more wealth. This kind of extreme inequality, mass impoverishment, and homelessness alongside obscene excess, these are not indicators of a democratic society. So we want you to vote communist to send a clear message to these ruling classes that we are fed up with the status quo. But we need to build a movement much bigger than that. We want you getting active in your unions, organizing on campus, marching in the streets, and putting the kind of massive public pressure on whoever's in power that money simply cannot buy. Working people have never had anything in this country given to them. We fought for it. And it's time to remind these big corporations and their representatives in the government that we still know how to fight and how to win. So thank you so much again for having me here.
Thank you, Stasi. Ravi Parmar of the BC NDP, your closing remarks, please.
Sorry, Mike, took a sec for the camera to turn on. First of all, thank you to you for being such an awesome moderator extraordinaire, and providing an opportunity to the WestShore, for us as candidates. I want to thank the WestShore Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Sooke Chamber, Julie and Britt and your teams, for the opportunity for all of us to be able to speak directly to the voters of Langford-Juan de Fuca. I want to thank my fellow candidates for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us as well. I've been fighting for this community almost my entire life, whether it was a student at the old Belmont Secondary School on Jacqueline Road, you may remember the one filled with duct tape, or for the last 10 years as your chair of the Sooke School District Board of Education, where I delivered the largest expansion of public education in our school district's history. I have a proven track record of delivering infrastructure for a community, and I want to take that track record and continue working hard as your MLA for Langford-Juan de Fuca, delivering not only on education, but also on other needs such as healthcare, housing, transportation infrastructure, and more relief on the cost of living issue impacting so many families in Langford-Juan de Fuca. If you share in this vision, please vote for me, Ravi Parmar, your BC NDP candidate here in Langford-Juan de Fuca, today in the advance polls, which I did this morning, or throughout the next number of days and on June 24th. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you, Ravi. And we'll hear from Michael Lee on behalf of Elena Lawson of the BC United Party.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity here. Lena, I'm not sure that was mentioned at the beginning of this, and certainly there was a bit of a cheap shot provided about her, but I would say that certainly she's been a dedicated champion for this area, and she wasn't able to join today for personal family reasons, but I know that there'll be a lot of opportunity over the next number of days, as throughout the life of this campaign, she's been very available to those who have any follow-up questions for her and want to speak with her directly. But we know that Elena is very passionate and persistent. She used that passion and persistence in fighting for autistic children and children on the spectrum, to fight for what the community and their family needs. And I know that she looks forward to further discussions with residents, truly listening to the needs of the community. There needs to be a new voice in the BC Legislative Assembly. Elena is not afraid to ask the tough questions and hold the government accountable for poor policy decisions they continue to make. She has a track record on that. She's demonstrated that repeatedly, including in this community that she wants to represent. The status quo is not working, and the community deserves better. Your community needs someone to stand up and fight for what's right. Elena will do that. It's time for a change, a time for voices to be heard again. Vote Elena Lawson on June 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Lee. And for the BC Conservative Party, Mike Harris, your closing remarks, please.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for having me here today. Like so many of you, I've struggled in my life providing for my family and understand how people are actually feeling out there. I'm a proud grandfather and I'd like to see my children and grandchildren have the same or better opportunity than I did. We are not heading in the right direction under the NDP. Affordability, healthcare, crime has never been worse. I'm sure we all know that. Our education system has completely lost its focus on academics. Without Site C and LNG, BC's economy would be the worst in the country. Government has grown, taxes are higher, and the average person is losing hope. Going back to the Liberals, BC United Party is not the answer. BC needs a fresh approach. BC needs a political party that always put you, the average person, at the center of every decision. Conservative Party is the only party offering a very different vision for a prosperous future in BC. Join me in fighting for BC. Vote for me at the Conservative Party of BC and to deliver real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Harris. And batting cleanup, we have Camille Currie of the BC Greens.
There is a common theme with the BC NDP government. It is that they do not listen to the experts in the field, and they do not implement plans for prevention, but rather wait to respond to sometimes when it's too late or at crisis point. They have demonstrated this with old growth by imposing deferrals and delays, but not implementing action. They have demonstrated this in our healthcare system by throwing money at Band-Aid approaches, but not addressing front-end issues like toxic work environments, preventative medicine, and basic access to a family doctor. All the while, it is the people of BC that continue to get more and more sick. The people of BC should not have to pay the price for the BC NDP and any future government's inability to plan for the future. We must plan beyond election cycles. Langford-Juan de Fuca has had a premier as their MLA, and yet we find ourselves in crisis and struggling. My family struggles like many of yours. What this community now needs is an MLA that will speak up and represent them, demand transparency and accountability, an MLA who doesn't have to agree with all the government decisions or party choices. I am that MLA. On June 24th, please vote Camille Currie. Advanced voting is open from June 16th to 21st. I want you to know that your vote counts. Your vote can make a difference. This is your opportunity to select someone that can truly represent you in this community.
Thank you very much, Camille. And thank you to all the candidates for appearing this afternoon and for stepping forward and running. Our democracy only works because of you. And of course, the second part of that is that everyone who can must vote. So, and I want to thank the WestShore Chamber and the Sooke Chamber for their technical expertise in setting this up and inviting me to moderate today. So thank you to all of the viewers who are watching live and those that will watch later on the YouTube site. Thank you for tuning in to learn about the candidates and their platforms. Advanced voting day takes place from June 16th to June 21st, and election day is June 24th. Please go to elections.bc.ca for more information. And with that, we will bring this event to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.